Are you struggling to understand the concept of euthanasia? Are you unsure whether it is the right thing to do or just plain murder? Euthanasia has been a highly debated topic for decades, and today, we'll delve deeper into it. Join us as we explore both sides of the argument and help you understand euthanasia better. Euthanasia, also known as assisted suicide, is the act of intentionally ending a person's life to relieve their pain and suffering. This can be done through the administration of drugs or other means. The concept of euthanasia has been debated for centuries, and it remains a highly controversial issue in modern society. On one hand, proponents of euthanasia argue that it is the right of an individual to choose when they want to end their life, especially in cases where they are suffering from a terminal illness with no cure. They believe that people have the right to die with dignity and without pain. On the other hand, opponents of euthanasia argue that it is against moral and ethical principles. They believe that life is sacred and that no one has the right to take it away, even if the person is suffering from a terminal illness. In this video, we will explore both sides of the argument and help you understand the complex ethical, moral, and legal implications surrounding euthanasia. The history of euthanasia can be traced back to ancient civilizations such as Greece and Rome, where it was considered an honorable way to die. However, the concept of euthanasia was later associated with religious beliefs, and it was viewed as a sin to take one's own life or to help someone end their life. In modern times, euthanasia has become a contentious issue, with proponents advocating for its legalization and opponents arguing that it is morally and ethically wrong. The debate over euthanasia has evolved over time, with different cultural, social, and political factors influencing the discussion. There are different types of euthanasia, and each type raises different ethical and moral questions. Active euthanasia involves actively ending a person's life, while passive euthanasia involves withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining treatment. Voluntary euthanasia occurs when a person with a terminal illness or unbearable suffering requests to end their life, while involuntary euthanasia is when someone's life is ended without their consent. Another form of euthanasia is physician-assisted suicide, where a doctor provides the means for a patient to end their own life. In this chapter, we will examine each type of euthanasia in detail and discuss the ethical and moral implications of each. Proponents of euthanasia argue that individuals have the right to make their own decisions about their life and death, including the decision to end their suffering. They believe that allowing euthanasia will provide a peaceful and dignified death for those who are suffering from terminal illness or unbearable pain. Others argue that euthanasia can be a compassionate response to the suffering of the terminally ill or those with chronic conditions that are causing unbearable pain. They argue that euthanasia is a humane and ethical way to end the suffering of individuals who are experiencing intolerable pain or distress. Opponents of euthanasia believe that intentionally ending a person's life is a violation of moral and ethical principles, such as the sanctity of life and the duty to preserve life. They argue that allowing euthanasia would undermine the fundamental value of life and lead to a devaluation of human life. In their view, the legalization of euthanasia would mean that human life is no longer valued as an absolute good, and that individuals would be viewed as disposable. Furthermore, opponents of euthanasia argue that legalizing euthanasia could lead to a slippery slope, where vulnerable individuals are pressured or coerced into choosing euthanasia. They fear that the elderly, disabled, and terminally ill individuals could feel like a burden to society or their families, and could feel pressured to end their lives prematurely. This could lead to a situation where individuals who are not terminally ill but are suffering from depression, loneliness, or other treatable conditions, may choose euthanasia. In countries where euthanasia is illegal, individuals who assist in the suicide or euthanasia of another person can face severe legal consequences, including imprisonment and fines. In some cases, healthcare professionals who assist in euthanasia can also lose their medical licenses and face disciplinary action. On the other hand, some countries have legalized euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide under certain conditions. For example, in the Netherlands, euthanasia is legal if the patient is suffering unbearably and has no prospect of improvement, if the request is voluntary and well considered, and if the patient has been fully informed about their medical condition and the available treatment options. Similarly, in Belgium, euthanasia is legal under similar conditions, including the requirement that the patient's request is made voluntarily and without coercion. Different religions have varying beliefs on the concept of euthanasia. For example, in Christianity, euthanasia is generally viewed as wrong because it goes against the belief that life is a sacred gift from God, and only God has the right to take it away. The Catholic Church, in particular, opposes euthanasia and assisted suicide, as they believe it is a violation of the fifth commandment, "You shall not kill." Similarly, in Islam, euthanasia is generally prohibited, as Muslims believe that life is a gift from Allah, and only Allah has the right to take it away. On the other hand, some religions view euthanasia as a compassionate response to human suffering. In Buddhism, for example, euthanasia is sometimes viewed as a means of relieving suffering, and some Buddhist scholars argue that it is a compassionate act that shows respect for the dying person's dignity. In Jainism, a religion that emphasizes non-violence, some practitioners argue that euthanasia can be a form of non-violence if it is done with the intention of relieving suffering. The ethics of euthanasia is a complex issue that involves moral, social, and legal considerations. The utilitarian perspective argues that euthanasia can be morally justified if it leads to the greatest amount of happiness and the least amount of suffering. According to this view, if euthanasia can relieve a person's suffering and improve their quality of life, it can be considered ethical. However, the deontological perspective emphasizes that euthanasia is intrinsically wrong and violates the principles of respect for human life and human dignity. From this view, euthanasia is not ethically permissible, regardless of its consequences. The virtue ethics perspective considers euthanasia in the context of the character and motivations of the people involved. According to this view, the moral worth of an action depends on the intentions and motives of the person carrying it out. Thus, the ethical justification of euthanasia depends on the motives of the physician and the patient involved. If the intention is to relieve the suffering of the patient, it can be considered ethically permissible. However, if the intention is to relieve the burden of caring for the patient or to save medical resources, it would be considered ethically wrong. Cultural differences play a significant role in the debate on euthanasia. Different cultures have different beliefs and values regarding death and dying, which can influence their views on euthanasia. For example, in some cultures, death is viewed as a natural part of life, and dying patients are cared for by their families and loved ones. In these cultures, euthanasia may be viewed as an unnatural and unacceptable way to end life. On the other hand, in cultures that emphasize individual autonomy and personal freedom, euthanasia may be viewed as a personal choice that should be respected. For example, in the Netherlands, euthanasia is legal and culturally accepted, and many people view it as a humane way to end suffering. There are different alternatives to euthanasia that are available to people who are suffering from terminal illnesses. Palliative care is a form of medical care that focuses on relieving the symptoms and improving the quality of life for patients with terminal illnesses. Hospice care is another form of end-of-life care that provides emotional and spiritual support to patients and their families. In addition to palliative and hospice care, there are also other alternatives to euthanasia, such as advanced care planning, which allows patients to express their wishes regarding end-of-life care. This can include specifying the kind of medical treatment they would like to receive and the circumstances under which they would like to refuse treatment. In conclusion, euthanasia is a complex issue that involves ethical, legal, and cultural considerations. While proponents of euthanasia argue that it is a humane way to end the suffering of patients with terminal illnesses, opponents argue that it violates the principles of respect for human life and human dignity. The debate on euthanasia is ongoing, and it is important for individuals and society to approach this issue with sensitivity and understanding. Alternatives to euthanasia, such as palliative and hospice care, can provide relief from pain and suffering for patients with terminal illnesses. Advanced care planning is another alternative that allows patients to express their wishes regarding end-of-life care. Ultimately, the decision to pursue euthanasia is a personal and complex one that involves weighing the ethical, legal, and cultural considerations. It is important for individuals to have access to information and resources that can help them make informed decisions regarding end-of-life care.